Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I am so excited for today. We're just gonna wait a little bit longer so that everyone can join. Oh, yay! Hi.
Lady,
I'll let you begin.
good evening. How are you? How's everyone?
I'm good. How are you?
You guys can hear me okay? Wonderful, wonderful. Hey, well, we've been building up for this for a while now, so let's dive in, shall we? You excited?
I am.
Okay, let's dig in. Let's dig in. Let's kind of set up the house rules, and then we can just delve into um, the writer stuff. So let's dig into what brings us together. You know, we're a community of writers, and we're united by our passion for writing and a common challenge, word improv. That's what brought us here. And what improv is, it's a writing challenge where writers write a story using a set of new words, just some obscure words. And a story, it's broadly defined as a tale, a poem, a skit, and there's no minimum limit or word count. And it gives people an opportunity to learn new words and participate in word improv by following Word Sleuth on Word Sleuth on Instagram. So the purpose of our interview, this is part of a series, and I believe we're on episode 11, where we, as contributors to the improv challenge, we're going to interview each other so that our community and our collective audience, they learn more about word improv, and we get a chance to promote our work, which is the gravy on the mashed potatoes, is it not? Because you're
Yes.
an indie author just like I am. So that said, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to introduce you, and I'm going to read your bio, and then we're going to kind of flesh that out, and we're going to give you the floor because you've done some amazing things, and I'm excited to be sitting here in the chair with you and having this back and forth. So shall we begin?
Definitely.
Yeah, so I have Catherine Nesbitt here. She's an Arizona native, and she's 30 something years old. I'm not gonna flex out the whole age. And your parents are part of the baby boomer generation. And your
Correct.
father's side, he's from Canton, China. Last time you had a chance to verify that.
Yeah.
And then you said your mom's side is of European heritage. So one thing that you mentioned in your bio that I found interesting is that you joked that your ancestors on both sides, were part of building the American Transcontinental Railroad. And that's something I want to delve into, once we get through the bio, because I found that fascinating. And then you mentioned that you have known your husband half of your life. And that's always an interesting stat, those things where we're together with somebody and we've known them longer than we haven't. And you have this mindset where you like to engage in battle or steel sharpen steel. And that's a
Yes.
biblical voice. And I think that's
Yes.
part of being writers. And you also mentioned disability. And I want to flesh that out because there's all types of disabilities. And I know you and I kind of went back and forth with that term. So that's something I do want to flesh out as well. But what you mentioned is that you want to use your voice to write and advocate for others that may be in this box of sorts. So you've been writing your whole life and you learn technique from an outreach center that serves people. And that said, I just want to, give you the floor and just kind of delve into that. So what powers you about writing? How did you come into this? Do you do this professionally now, or is this a hobby? Tell me
So,
about that.
so I have one self-published novel on Amazon. It's called Jay, A Singularity Story. And
Okay.
it's about a man. He spends his entire life working in artificial intelligence. And upon his death, he becomes this sentient being. and he kind of bridges the gap between AI and, you know, human intelligence. And, you know, you start asking all these questions as a writer, like what constitutes a relationship? What happens to us after we die? And I chose writing as a form of, you know, social commentary in a way that it's very subjective. I don't necessarily agree with everything my characters agree with. You know, they're very much their own people, not me. Um,
Mhm.
but I wanted to tell stories from characters that aren't traditionally represented. You know, how many times have we heard that, you know, the prince on the white horse comes and saves the princess? Like, I'm so over that.
Yeah.
And, you know, to talk about somebody who is my main character, Jay, he is a resident alien of the United States,
Hmm.
did some of his education here. He is of British and Chinese descent. And
Hmm.
so you go into some of the weird culture things regarding, you know, Chinese people, the superstitions, the fear of ghosts. You know, it's
Hmm.
very much old world. And, you know, him coming here and getting his education here, he was greatly influenced by the culture here. And then the woman that he leaves behind is his fiance. And so her and her brother go on this journey to prove that this really happened. He really did reach singularity. This isn't a clever chatbot. And so they go and they meet with his friends, teachers, family. It's this whole journey. I was recently on vacation and I wrote
Hmm.
25 poems.
Okay.
Um, and that will be released as an audiobook.
All right. All right. So tell me this. So your preferred style of writing, is it more the narrative, or is it or does it vary based on where the spirit moves you? Now, I think you answered part of that question by this poetry book, and you piqued my interest there because I've been told that I'm a licensed poet. So, where do you fall? Tell me about that.
I'd say probably lean more towards narrative.
Okay.
The ability to tell a story and like, you know,
Mhm.
even what I submitted for this challenge that I'll be reading later,
Okay.
you know, was, you know, I've got like less than 15 lines here. And, you know, I tell my grandmother's entire life story pretty much, you know, all the
Okay.
highlight reel. So I think it's interesting to not only tell somebody's story, but tell somebody's history through story, talk about the way
Yes.
that the world changed and was influenced by their story.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot of great works have been recycled. You know, Shakespeare was redone as Lion King, for instance, Hamlet, you know.
Very
Um,
true. Very true.
and it's because, you know, these stories are so just, you know, iconic and they I mean, I don't know if it's Hollywood to blame that we just have to
Mhm.
repackage it for each new generation because nobody's
Yeah.
going to
That.
sit down and read Shakespeare anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a way of you know, making Brussels sprouts palatable to people that don't like it. That's what Shakespeare is. But so tell me this. Out of I know we did a couple of word improv stories, and I want to do a pivot and have you read the one that you chose. And I'm
Okay.
kind of curious why you picked that one. And we'll just dissect it once you finish reading it. So I'm going to give you the floor and let you and present it to these people out here.
Sounds good. Okay. This is based on my grandmother, and it's
Okay.
called The Legendary Lily Jones.
All right.
She was the matriarch of our family, or as the French would say, our Donienne. Her life began in the early 1900s, and on my fourth birthday, it would end. It must have been hard raising a family in the backwoods of Tennessee, having on average no less than 10 mouths to feed. Supper was soup made from bouillon and viridescent greens from the garden. If you stepped out of line, you caught a whooping, but your transgressions were pardoned. Her devotion to God and her love for family was nonpareil. Her recipes were secrets she'd never tell. There was this old hickory tree out front in the yard. You'd cut your own switch to get beat with, but it didn't scar. That hickory tree was symbolic of the strength and growth of our family. A literary MacGuffin of Joneses still standing, to put it figuratively. With Native American and Irish blood in her veins, she whooped people she felt stepped out of their lanes. The last incident she had with the cops, she must have been at least 80, going gaga chasing a grown woman with a switch round that old hickory tree.
I love that. I love that. That echoes. Now, I'm a genealogist and I read that. And just hearing you deliver it, it gave me echoes because you had four key words there: whoopings, food, switches, and family. And that's something that echoes in my family. And that's probably why I've been able to recall so much history. And I find echoes of that in how you recalled your grandmother. And we all refer to our grandmothers in different terms. Like my maternal grandmother is my big mama, my paternal grandmother is my grandma. So that was powerful. So other than me just assuming that it's just utter adoration that you have for your grandmother, why did you choose that?
So I liked this because over her lifetime, she saw a lot. She
Mm-hmm.
married at 15 before women were allowed the privilege of voting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and soon into her marriage, the Great Depression hit. So I'm not literally not lying when I say she fed her children soup and vegetables, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She definitely knew how to stretch a dollar, and she oftentimes worked as a property manager just to get lower rent for her family. And, you know, some people argue about, you know, do you spank your kids? Is that necessary? And, you know, this is a very generational thing where, you know,
Yeah.
getting hit with a switch didn't mean that you were being abused. They
Right.
didn't scar you. You know, you didn't, you know, it stung like hell, but,
I
you
think I
know,
got whooped into being a writer.
yeah,
You know, I think there's a distinction between, because when people say spankings, I kind of look at them sideways because I never got a spanking. I got like that instructive term that you use. I got a whooping. It's totally different.
yeah.
But being that times change, I know that I didn't employ that with my. I couldn't employ that with my son. There's so many resources and things out here that lend to a different way of doing things. But I think people tend to disparage what our ancestors did. Like that was a bad thing that they did. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Um, that it built character. Would you agree or no?
Yeah, so with my grandmother,
Mhm.
you got whooped and
Uh,
you cried, and then you
mhm.
came and sat on the couch next to her and she held you and gave you a piece of candy.
Uh,
And it was over, you know, no hard feelings,
uh,
no, you know, you're bad. I feel like honestly, the way that we treat children these days, with the amount of verbal abuse that they witness either going on between their parents or
yes.
that is directly, you know, sort of directed at them, and you know, I'm not going to hurt you physically, but I will
Mhm.
cut you down emotionally to express my anger and frustration with you. I think that's worse
I
than,
would
you
agree.
know,
I would agree.
get a switch off the tree,
I would
you know.
agree. And I think we may be more sensitive to that as writers because words have power. And that
Definitely.
said, you know, other than these things, what else have you written? I know you said you've written 25 poems while you were out. You have these other works. What else do you have in the cauldron? What
Okay.
else? What are you holding out on? Let me
Okay,
shake it
so
out of you.
okay, I'll divulge, I suppose. So I wrote a script-ish. I mean, it's mostly just dialogue with a little bit of
Okay.
scene building here and there. It's about 120 pages. It's called
Mhm.
Deja Vu, and
Okay.
it's about a girl. She's 17 years old, and she is busking in a subway in New York. like the subway station in New York.
Okay.
And she gets approached by a woman to work in a nightclub.
Okay.
That's very much like, think Showgirls, if
Okay.
you remember that movie.
I
Um,
do.
yeah. And so, they have a performance, they sing, they dance in really risque outfits. You eat dinner, and it's very much, a club. Everything seems normal and, legitimate on the first floor. And then upstairs, different things happen.
Hmm.
And I wanted to tell this story because I believe that this is the oldest and most taboo industry to date.
Yes.
And it is often characterized in a negative way.
Okay.
So, this story, it gives a very human side to it. It's like
Okay.
we all have to keep our lights on. And some
Okay.
people
Right.
have different means of keeping their lights on. And it also talks about the pain that you go through when you do work in an industry like that. There's a scene in it where, one of the characters is, she's like, have you ever dated a showgirl? And he's like, I could not date a showgirl. They carry
Hmm.
this sadness that
Right.
I couldn't deal with. And, it talks about, the power differences of socioeconomic issues
Hmm.
involving, people in this industry. One of the lines of it is, these girls act on Broadway. And then one of the other characters says, yeah, but they're not good enough to make it out of the chorus. And so
Ah.
it's like, a lot of people, that are trying to be actors, models, whatever it is, do
Mhm.
kind of get sucked into this sort of lifestyle. Um, and, we've even seen that with, what came out about the Les Wexner story on the Victoria's Secret Angels and Demons production
Uh,
on Netflix.
mhm.
Um, and how, there's all of these powerful men that, did terrible, terrible things. And
That's an interesting concept because I was thinking of that recently, just as one of those side projects that you have on the back of your folder. Just with this being the oldest profession, and with so much in our climate now that leans towards Bible thumping, for lack of a better word, I would just love the linkages to that with the biblical, because that's something, those are stories that are told throughout the Bible. And I always find it fascinating, some of the debauchery that's in the stories in the Bible,
right.
that if you took away the context, people would clutch their pearls.
It's
Is
true.
that something? Is that something that you've explored, like the biblical side of that and the hypocrisy that kind of surrounds that?
Yes. So, actually, I have a piece if you'd like to hear about religion
I
and
think
faith.
everybody would. I think everybody would.
Okay. This is a little preview from my audiobook that will be released as soon as I get it
And while you're
put
setting that up,
together.
what gave you the idea for the audiobook? Because this is, this kind of leads perfectly into the question that I had as far as, these other projects that you have in the future. So what led you into deciding, like, hey, I'm going to do an audiobook because
So,
I need to do one?
so I chose the format of audiobook specifically for the poetry because I believe that poetry comes to life when it's spoken aloud.
I agree.
And I tend to rhyme words in the way that you don't necessarily say them correctly. My
Okay,
favorite
okay.
example is I saw Eminem on Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes. And he's
Mhm.
like, why do people say nothing rhymes with orange? I put my orange, 4 inch door hinge in storage and had porridge with George. And I was
True.
like, wow, you can rhyme things with orange. That's fantastic. Good to know.
That's fair. That's a good utility. I do that accidentally, sometimes. 'Cause, I mean, I'm an accidental poet, but that's a story for another day.
For sure. Okay. I have this up, so let me read this. It's just called Faith.
It's
Some
called
families,
Faith.
yeah, Faith.
Okay.
Some families get together to worship each week. Others choose different faiths to seek. I've known brothers who both preached but couldn't agree on what was right or wrong or what to believe. You can't save someone's soul through force. I've even seen arguments about God cause a divorce. Countries have split and wars have been caused by religion. If God is love, why is there so much division? Every culture in history has had a concept of a deity, yet in America today, most people are just greedy. Religion can be used to control and oppress. You shouldn't leave a service feeling distressed. Some people preach the prosperity message. Give more to get more. It's an equivalent percentage. There's no truth in that teaching. It's just a wolf up there preaching. Americans strive for big houses and fancy cars. One doctrine teaches us to be content with what's already ours. Seek God through relationship, not ritualistically, however you choose to connect with them spiritually. Who's saved and who's damned, no one can tell, but you won't save anyone telling them that they're going to hell.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's, I think that's the omnipresent question that we have right now. You see all those, you see that there? You see the fire?
Apparently I
Hey,
started a
Echo.
fire.
I think that's the thing that we're battling against right now. And I think that's part of the duty that you and I have as writers, because I know we touched on, I'm not a theologian. I don't want anybody to think I'm a theologian, but I think writers, we're a lot like the prophets in the biblical times, in that we're telling these stories, we're warning people of what's to come, just like you did in your piece. And people, they hear it as Charlie Brown talk. And then we get to a point where we're silent. We're that hermit on the hill, and we're just watching everything play out as material for our next book. So, I mean, and I know, I know you and I, as writers, I mean, that's that unspoken secret. But for anybody watching this, that's true. You know, that's what writers do. You know, and it's also bad to have to talk on speakerphone around us as well, because we're like sponges. We hear that stuff, we hear narratives, and we soak that in. And that's something I do want to flesh out briefly before we kind of close up shop. As far as your narratives, and somebody laughed there, I taught them something there. I let the cat out of the bag there, so hopefully they don't have that in the clips. But as far as your narrative, I know that you mentioned that in the beginning, but where else do you pull narratives from? Is this something that you passively pull from? Because I know that sometimes I pull from random dialogue that I hear walking down the street, and it just kind of comes back to me. Is that one of your methods, or can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so I kind of condense people into characters.
Okay, okay,
So like in Jay, for instance, I talk about the female lead's 5-day a week friends. Um,
okay, okay,
and that's the concept of, the girl that you go to happy hour with.
okay.
And then, she's loosely based on somebody I knew in real life, and it says, we connected over our love of,
Hard pause right there. Hard
Taylor
pause right
Swift.
there. 1 second there. Now you said something there. I want to bookmark this.
Okay.
You said it's based on somebody that you know, so that's something else. Those other little writer secrets here, because people
I
are
mean, not
responding here.
100% based on this person that I know, but the archetype of your 5-day a week friend,
Uh-huh.
and, how you connect on things like pop culture.
Yeah.
And the only thing that gives it away is that, there is a line where she says, so you went out on another Tinder date. And then her friend replies, no, why, what would make you think that? And she's like, I hear it in your voice. I can tell you had chicken strips and bad conversation last night. And of course she replies, well, I had chicken strips and great conversation, and just little things like that. This has nothing to do with a real person,
Uh,
but I did say, because they're both litigators,
okay.
one of the
Okay.
things that they connected over in my fictional piece is that they both had watched the Aaron Brockovich movie too many times and thought they were going to save the world through litigation, and then realized what an awful profession it was later.
I've heard a lot about that. I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, and they tell me that. And I'm a former journalist, and it's kind of the same, you know. Journalists morph into writers, lawyers morph into writers, or that. I think lawyers are kind of just like journalists in that they morph into writers. You're surrounded by a lot of words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my father always dreamt that I would go to law school, but my
Okay.
life took a different path. And I think that growing up and hearing stories from him of, business ventures he was in, problems he was having with clients, how he solved and won cases, all the privileged information that I will never
Hmm.
share publicly or write
Right.
as a memoir, um, did prepare me in a lot of ways to think critically. So once I did get to college, I competed on speech and debate team one semester. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
I just like randomly wrote this meta analysis without ever really ever being trained on the concept. Like my instructor literally just said, teach people how to be charismatic. And I said,
Okay.
that's really weird. So I just kind of like went through some theories, and then I talked about charisma because, Bernie Sanders was in the news at the time. And so
Right.
that's like the dark side of charisma, like the Jim Jones kind of side of charisma. But then
Mm.
there's people like Oprah who are very inspirational and have a huge following and do a lot of good in the world. So that was kind of my analysis of, I can't really teach you how to be charismatic, but I can give you some examples.
That's a perfect segue for us to give you like the platform to kind of promote your book, and then for us to kind of branch over into your turn in the interviewer's chair. So I want to thank you for just kind of fleshing this out. This was great. I was really looking forward to having you flesh out the obscure, because a lot of times we put things in boxes and we neglect to see the complexity in things. So as far as the next interview, do you know when your date is?
I have no idea.
Okay. And that's something that we'll follow up. That's something that'll be followed up with as far as the date and the time of the next interview. So what I do want to do is that for people that are watching this, we want to invite you to be a part of the collective, to learn new words and participate in word improv by following Word Sleuth on Instagram. And if you want to get involved in the Pass the Baton interview series, then you're welcome to send a DM to Word Sleuth here on Instagram. And then feel free to follow Catherine and follow myself. And Catherine, as far as your books, where can people get your books? Are you at bookstores? Are you on Amazon? Do you offer signed copies? How much are the copies? Tell everybody about that.
Haven't thought that much in advance. Currently, I have one book, Jay, a Singularity Story, available on Amazon.
Okay.
I don't know what platform I will publish the audiobook on. I'm still up in the air about that. That's in the process of being recorded and mastered right now. And
Okay.
then as far as Deja Vu, my hopes and dreams are that it would be adapted into a musical.
Okay. Now, do you have a blog as well, or YouTube or Twitter
Um,
handle?
Twitter handle is, let me double check. I think so. My Twitter handle is catnesbitt88.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I have a webpage. It's nesbitt.house.
Okay.
It's uh, basically how you can contact me and my husband. He
Okay.
is in technology and works in that side of things. I'm a writer and would like to advocate for people in my community.
Okay.
Um, so, if you need to contact either of us, it's just nesbitt.house is the um, page, so you can kind of see who we are, what we do. And then you can find my LinkedIn page through that. Um, yeah, that's me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, well, this has been beautiful. Great use of time. And of course, everyone, I'm Sean P. Wrights. You always find me at the water's edge. My website is Sean P. Wrights. And I've saved everybody the trouble as far as all of the search and things of that sort. Just type in Sean P. Wrights and you can find me anywhere on the web. So let's let's keep doing what we do. Let's keep shouting to the people that are, you know, really for us, because I really sincerely think that we have a sacred role as writers, because our words are gonna be here much longer than we are here.
That's
So
true.
we have to walk the walk. So I salute you in that, and I appreciate what you're doing. So let's keep making the earth shake.
I appreciate your time so much. I've enjoyed corresponding with you over these past couple of weeks just in preparation for the interview. I'm really excited to see your cookbook come out, because I
Oh
also
no, you
like
okay?
like I will make a dish and call my dad and be like, "What do I do?" And he like explains it
Okay.
to me real quick, and then I like eat it and I'm like, Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt Joanne, whatever, like just making the dish that was like their signature dish at the potluck.
You did a thing now. Now you mentioned food. Now that pulls people in. Let's let's. I know we're closing out, but let's delve into that a little bit, because if I don't, people will get mad. Because what happens is when people see me doing interviews and they see a social media outreach, they'll see me and they'll be like, "How come you didn't mention the cookbook? What about croquettes? What about grits?" So food is poetry, and I've mentioned this before. Food and poetry are the same thing. They operate on different frequencies. And in food, you're taking ingredients and you're putting it together for nourishment for the body. And with poetry, you're doing the same thing with ingredients, with words, metaphor, emotive, and you're putting it together for feeding the spirit. And what I do with cooking, I simply combine the both of them. And the thing that the tie-in with the salmon croquette that you may be alluding to, that everybody alludes to, that's a tie-in with my grandfather. That's my grandfather's recipe. I recreated that from taste memory, and I was trying to improve on it, and I couldn't get it together. And I was talking to my mama one day, and she mentioned the key ingredient, which is I'm not telling anybody the key ingredient, because you got to buy the book. But
You
she
got to make
mentioned
money somehow.
exactly, exactly. And when she gave me that key ingredient, it was like, oh, and I was able to put it together. And food is a conduit to storytelling, because all of the great stories, more often than not, they take place over a meal, because our
Yes.
guard is down and we are open and we're receptive to these messages. So by way of me putting together the recreating the recipe, I got taken back to sitting at the table eating these croquettes and getting punched in the chest by my older brother for eating the last croquette. And it was just like, hey, the croquettes were so good that I would take a fist to the chest. But that said, all of those stories flow from food. My recipe with collard greens, I get messages or memories, stories that my aunt Lillian told me while she was playing cards. So that's the whole tie-in with the cookbook and family and genealogy. And that was something that you had mentioned in one of our correspondences. And that was something in your piece that echoed with me when you said, food and switches. Because that's what my Aunt Lillian did. My Aunt Lillian grew vegetables. She grew collard greens in the garden. And that was what a switch was too. And I remember being 16 and she told me to go cut a switch. And I was like, Auntie, I'm 16. And she was like, can I curse here? Well, I'm talking about my auntie, so I'm quoting her. And she said, shit, what that mean? Go cut too. And I was like, oh, damn. But she wrapped me up in a hug and said, come here. And she gave me a hug. She didn't make me go cut both of the switches. I was going to go and cut it. But that's the power of food, and that's what I want to be able to give back to the world because, like you mentioned, we're under attack. You know, we're the disability that I mentioned before is that I think that we suffer from, that other humans suffer from, is a lack of empathy, and food offers is the one thing we all have in common. Race, class, creed, color. We all eat.
Mm-hmm.
We all eat. And if we're able to come together under the auspices of that via poetry and just kind of speaking to lead the world in a better place than what we found it in, I think we can start to move back. I don't want to say move back to our humanity. I don't think we really had a grasp on that in the first place, but that's 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 my thought process with food, and that's what you pulled out of me, and I salute you with that because that's I think I was wondering, I was like, am I gonna get through this without somebody asking me about the cookbook? And you did. I salute you on that. Anything else that that we did not cover? People out here, because people seem to be very active before we close out and exit stage left.
No, I mean, follow
I,
us on social media. I'll reply to you if you're not overly direct and creepy. Um, I hope that you support local indie authors like the
yes,
people that are promoted on this page and look us up
yes,
and buy our books and
yes. Buy our
who
books.
knows?
Buy our books, and especially anybody that is going to ask me about the cookbook now on the next couple of days. If you don't buy my books, I won't have money to buy the ingredients to make these wonderful dishes. So that's my offer there. And Catherine, it's been a privilege, an honor. Let's keep making the earth shake. Everybody, hey, thanks for stopping in and support indie authors. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Bye. So great to see you.